They say records are made to be broken, but it's not every day that a change in regulations provides a whole swag of events for challenge. Using enviable foresight and negotiating skills, Melbourne racing car driver Mike Minear began, 18 months ago, to clear the way for such an attack. Setting his sights on Australian and international speed and endurance records, Minear discussed with the Confederation of Australian Motorsports the fact that Australia was moving further and further away from the record standards of the world governing body of motorsport, the Fédération Internationale du Sport Automobile in Paris. The Australian Confederation, commonly known as CAMS, agreed that vehicles were classed differently down under. Record distances and some of the regulations differed also. Over the years, Australian records have been built up on an ad hoc basis. It was time to wipe the slate clean and bring Australia into line with the rest of the world. Minear had already been to Volvo with the idea of pitting one of their cars against the clock in Australia. The stage was set. The car was to be the Volvo 360 GLT, and the venue for the challenge, a demanding 3.2 kilometre track at Surfers Paradise over Easter. The results are now part of Australian motoring history. As these video highlights were being put together, confirmation arrived that Minear and his team had created 25 national records. A further 11 international records were also in the bag. The records are in the 1500 to 2000 cc class of Category A for sports and touring cars. The records range from a standing quarter mile to the gruelling 24 hours non-stop. The records were set on the difficult flat race circuit at Surfers Paradise rather than on a straight road or high-speed banked oval. Behind the wheel is 33 years old Mike Minear. Like his three co-drivers, Ron Sutherland, Rob Bride and Paul Elliott, Minear is not a full-time motor professional. He has a 10-year background in touring car racing, but away from the track, he's a retail buying systems manager for Myer Australia. It was Minear who negotiated successfully with the Gold Coast Council to hold the event on their knucklebone-shaped track. The council was impressed by the quietness of the 360 GLT, Volvo's latest entry onto the Australian market. The event was held under the strict surveillance of CAMS. Indeed, it was Australia's first international record attempt for exactly 20 years. In that year, Sir Donald Campbell's Bluebird tried for a new world record on the dry salt bed of Lake Eyre. Though the pit crew had never worked together before, they quickly blended into a smooth team. Like Mike Minear and his co-drivers, they were not full-time pros. One was a sales manager, another a parts manager, a third a computer programmer, and the fourth a national buyer for men's shoes. However, their equipment was as professional as could be assembled. Their expertise could be tested to the full as the 360 GLT moved closer to its record-setting achievements.
Thank you. Today, we've got a long day, 24 hours. It won't rain until approximately 9:05 tomorrow morning. I've organised that. Joe's promised me he's spoken to his friend upstairs.
Throughout the speed and endurance test, there were regular changes in the driving team. But with so much excitement around, there was little chance of sleep. On the first day, 14 records were in the bag, proof enough of the harmony between man and machine. By the second day, the marathon had been hailed an international success. The clear Queensland days provided ideal driving conditions, but there were plenty of hazards, the most severe being the highly abrasive flat race circuit. The near side front tyre of the Volvo shredded in the first 36 laps, giving some cause for worry. An average of 6 tyres were replaced every 2 hours. A stock of steel-belted Pirelli P6 tyres had been laid in and looked like they might all be needed. With 6 corners to the right and 3 to the left, the track was putting more than usual demands on car and driver. Although the car could have been highly modified under the regulations, Mike Minear chose to have the car virtually in standard condition to show its true performance. The only departure from the showroom model came in the mandatory fitting of safety items: internal roll bars, fire extinguishers, safety harness and the driving lights. As the hours passed, the driving and pit crews discussed just how many records would be established by the Volvo 360 GLT. For them, it was a challenge of a lifetime and the chance to be part of history in the making. Our helicopter kept track of the 360 GLT as it continued its assault on the Surfers Paradise circuit. This bird's eye view showed how the car made many difficult manoeuvres look easy.
Okay, it was a bad tyre, right? Right, I'll get you.
Soon it would be dusk, but nothing had been overlooked. There was plenty of vision thanks to 4 specially fitted driving lights provided by Hella. When the 12-hour record came up at 9 p.m, the average lap time had dropped to just under 109 kilometres per hour, 2 to 3 kilometres slower than the average time being set in the afternoon. This stemmed from a problem 3 hours earlier when a precautionary brake pad change almost ended in disaster. After the change, Minear took the car out but couldn't drive it because of vicious wheel wobble. A check later showed that the fitting of the new coal brake pads had warped the discs. They would have to be changed. As quickly but as carefully as possible, the crew fitted new discs and brake calipers in a pit stop that lasted an agonising 11 minutes and 30 seconds. The effect on times was troublesome, but the car was running strongly again and was sound in every mechanical respect. The 2,000 kilometre mark was passed during a superb early morning session. Now the only record left to secure was the big one, 24 hours. The car came in for some attention in the morning too, with the crew sliding in another set of brake calipers and discs, and rear drums and shoes for good measure. During these early hours, co-driver Ron Sutherland set the fastest lap time of the entire record attempt, 1:36.5.
You got a reverse, right? Move that right. Hands up, please. You ready?
Yes, and new one there. Leave that left rear on, okay? Pardon? The left rear is fine. That's fine. What's that other rear one?
It's only my finger, Bernie, mate.
That one is good. That'll go 60, mate.
During the marathon, a tiger moth appeared overhead. Its owner had flown in to witness the progress of the speed and endurance trial.
What do you call a stall approach, isn't it, Max? A little bit out there.
The tiger moth was making amends for putting a spanner in the works during the running of the short distance events the previous day. As the little plane came into land in the centre of the race circuit, where it was moored at night, its undercarriage caught in wires carefully laid in the grass. This threw out timing for almost an hour. The agile craft was to reappear on several occasions to entertain the Volvo team. The moth is a part of the Gold Coast scene, providing joy flights for tourists. But the performance it put on for the speed and endurance supporters was a rare demonstration of free falling and other complicated aerobatics. To see a plane fluttering to the ground like a dead leaf could normally be a distraction. But the men behind the wheel were as professional as the man behind the joystick. Their brief relationship continued on in harmony. The news and documentary teams occasionally made use of the passenger seat for some dramatic shots.
time you plug up. That's right. That's good.
For the first time in Australia, a computer was used to record lap data, pit stop information, driver performance and fuel economy, and to relay these details to the event director and pit manager. Computer equipment from Hewlett-Packard and software from BBJ Computers in Melbourne achieved all of these goals. During the marathon, the computer supplied information on tyre wear, fuel economy and brake pad usage, and it advised on the right time for replacements. It also indicated the most opportune time to stop. This was vital in postponing a regular pit stop should a record mark be imminent. And then it was all over. The event had much of the loneliness of the long-distance runner. Only a small, enthusiastic group cheered the Volvo past the finish, the same group that had driven, serviced and supported the sedan through its run. But they already were aware that they'd helped bring in the biggest swag of records for any motoring event ever held in Australia. The first true international records ever in Australia. Within minutes, the news had flashed around the world in Australia and had grabbed space in every afternoon newspaper. It was also broadcast on main evening radio and television news services. As one Sydney tabloid described the 24-hour event, 2,646 kilometres is a nice day's drive.
You don't have to hate me anymore.
Well, if you feel so inclined, you can give 3 cheers to the successful team. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
The small band of reporters, cameramen and sound technicians from around Australia swelled the crowd of well-wishers. The message they conveyed was basically the same. Volvo had broken its conservative image at Surfers Paradise. The 360 GLT had not only survived a thrashing and a total of 6,616 gear changes, it had done so without any major mechanical mishaps. Volvo had a fleet-footed production vehicle that was absolutely bulletproof.
Max mentioned this is a world first. There's been record runs in Europe, in America, on salt plains, on straight roads, on a race circuit like this with curves on it. We've run in both directions. We've run flying kilometres around curves, which has penalised our times, but we've done it. We've got the records. And I think we've done one of the best efforts I've ever seen on a race circuit in probably my 10 years involvement with the sport.
As you're well aware, the results that you'll receive or have already received are subject to official confirmation by CAMS. And Rob, congratulations. It'll be a great pleasure to present you with a medallion to commemorate today's event. These are in no order of preference or anything. Next driver is Paul Elliott. Paul comes from a background of Formula V racing. In fact, he was the 1981 Formula V Victorian champion. He drove under some considerable difficulties. He had a blistered left foot, but despite that, he impressed everybody, particularly in the timekeeping team, and I'm sure in the pit crew, with his consistent, smooth driving. So Paul, congratulations. My pleasure to congratulate you. This one has a few highlights in it that deserve mention. He had an epic 4-hour stint on the trot, from 11 o'clock last night to 3 a.m. this morning. He set the fastest lap of all the drivers at 1 minute 37.6, That gets back to Bob's point that Mike said that's what the car could achieve. It consistently lapped with the 140 mark. Please present you with your
The Volvo Speed and Endurance Trial, a tribute to the efforts of a dedicated team.